Have you ever noticed how some actors don't just play a role? They become a presence? Think about that deep. Gravelly voice you've heard in car commercials, movie trailers, and classic westerns. A voice that sounds like it was carved out of stone, echoing across the deserts of the American West. A face framed by a silver mustache that instantly commands attention, even when he says nothing at all. You already know who I'm talking about. Sam Elliott. But here's the twist. Behind that iconic image of the cowboy, the mentor, the man of few words, lies a story very few people really know. It's a story of heartbreak and persistence, of quiet battles fought far away from the cameras. It's about a young boy who lost his father at 18, just when they were still locked in conflict over his future. A boy told he would never make it as an actor, and yet, decades later, that same boy grew into a man whose very silence became louder than most actors' speeches. So who is Sam Elliott? Really? How does a man so reserved, so resistant to Hollywood's spotlight, end up becoming one of the most recognizable and respected figures in film history? And more importantly, what can his journey teach us about loyalty, resilience, and staying true to who you are, even when the world tries to pull you in every direction? Hollywood has always been about noise, bright lights, scandals, and stars chasing attention. But Sam Elliott built his entire career by doing the exact opposite. He didn't scream to be noticed. He whispered. And somehow, that whisper has echoed louder than most shouts. His first real role? A blink-and-you'll-miss-it appearance in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, credited only as card player number 2. No lines, no spotlight, just a young man sitting at a poker table, silently studying legends like Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And while the audience didn't notice him, Sam noticed everything. He treated the moment like a masterclass, storing away every detail in what he later called his invisible notebook. By the 1970s, he was picking up steady guest roles on shows like Mission Impossible, Gunsmoke, and Hawaii Five-0. These weren't headline roles, but they shaped his reputation. He was the actor who showed up on time, always knew his lines, and never caused trouble. In a town where egos could destroy careers overnight, Sam's reliability became his quiet superpower. While most young actors tried to look like clean-cut heartthrobs, Sam grew a thick mustache, let his hair fall long, and embraced a rugged style that made him stand out. That decision cost him some romantic leading man roles, but it opened an entirely different door. The cowboy, the soldier, the man of quiet strength. Roles no one could play better. And this is where the irony comes in. The very traits his father thought would hold him back. His stubbornness, his refusal to conform, became the qualities that defined him. So, by the time the 1970s were closing, Sam Elliott wasn't a star yet, but he was building something far more valuable, an identity. The kind of identity Hollywood couldn't easily replace. By the mid-1980s, Sam Elliott had already spent nearly 2 decades in Hollywood. To most people, he was still that guy with the mustache who showed up in westerns or television dramas. Reliable, yes. Distinctive, sure. But not yet a star. Then came a film that would change everything. Mask, 1985. In Mask, Elliott played Gar, the biker boyfriend and emotional anchor of Rusty Dennis, portrayed by Cher. The film told the heartbreaking true story of Rocky, a boy with a rare craniofacial condition. For Elliott, this wasn't another cowboy role where he could hide behind silence and rugged looks. This time, he had to show tenderness, vulnerability, and fatherly love. And here's what's remarkable. Audiences who thought they knew Sam Elliott suddenly saw a different side. He wasn't just the strong, stoic type. He was warm, caring, and deeply human. Critics praised his performance, calling it surprisingly layered and the soul of the film. What most people didn't know was that Elliott worked behind the scenes to bond with child actor Eric Stoltz. creating a real sense of trust so that their on-screen father-son relationship felt authentic. This was the moment Sam Elliott proved he wasn't a one-dimensional cowboy. He could play the emotional heart of a story, and audiences never forgot it. But Hollywood is funny. Instead of capitalizing on that dramatic performance, the industry soon pulled him back into what it knew best: rugged masculinity. In 1989, Elliott starred in Roadhouse alongside Patrick Swayze, playing Wade Garrett, the wise mentor to Swayze's hot-headed Dalton. At first glance, it looked like another tough guy role, but Elliott brought something unique: calm authority. He didn't need to shout or throw wild punches to dominate the screen. In fact, his quiet presence made him the emotional center of the film. Viewers walked away remembering not just Swayze's flashy moves, but Elliott's grounded wisdom. This became his trademark. While Hollywood in the late 80s and early 90s was obsessed with loud, muscle-bound heroes like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, Sam Elliott carved out a niche as the anti-action star. He didn't need explosions or exaggerated catchphrases. He needed only a few words, spoken in that deep, steady voice, to leave an audience spellbound. The 1990s pushed his reputation even further with historical epics. In Gettysburg, 1993, he portrayed Union cavalry officer General John Buford, a role that demanded discipline and gravitas. In Tombstone, 1993, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Kurt Russell as Virgil Earp, delivering one of his most memorable performances as a lawman who radiated quiet strength. Here's the genius of Elliott's choices. He didn't chase roles for fame. He chose characters that aligned with who he truly was. And by doing that, he created a consistency audiences could trust. Think about it. How many actors have completely reinvented themselves only to fade from memory? Sam Elliott never reinvented himself. Instead, he deepened his craft within a narrow lane, turning it into an art form. One of the most fascinating examples of this came in 1998, when Elliott played the stranger in the Big Lebowski. His screen time was short, his dialogue minimal, yet fans still talk about it 25 years later. Why? Because Elliott had perfected the art of presence. He didn't need a full monologue to make you feel something. A look, a pause, a single line in that baritone voice carried more weight than pages of dialogue. It's a lesson not just for actors, but for anyone. Sometimes less is more. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the quietest voice can leave the deepest mark. The 2000s saw Elliott testing new waters. He played a principled officer in We Were Soldiers, 2002, a stern military father in Hulk, 2003, and even poked fun at himself in Thank You for Smoking, 2005. But the defining moment of his later career came with The Hero, 2017. In The Hero, Elliott played an aging actor facing cancer, fading fame, and regret. It was as close to autobiographical as he had ever gotten. He later admitted that many of the film's most emotional moments weren't acting at all. They were him, pouring his own life experiences into the role. Audiences felt that raw honesty. And suddenly, Sam Elliott wasn't just a supporting figure. He was the story. And then, of course, came A Star is Born, 2018, playing Bobby, the older brother of Bradley Cooper's troubled musician. Elliott needed only a handful of lines to break hearts worldwide. One scene in particular, when Bobby backs his truck down the driveway after a painful confrontation, became one of the most talked about moments in the entire film. That performance earned him an Oscar nomination, proving that even in his 70s, Sam Elliott could still stop Hollywood in its tracks in Hollywood, where marriages often dissolve faster than movie contracts. Long-lasting love stories are rare, yet Sam Elliott and Katharine Ross have managed to write one of the few that still feels genuine. Even decades later, their story didn't begin with fireworks or red carpets. It started quietly, with a glance on a film set. The year was 1969. Elliott was a nobody, playing an extra in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, while Katharine Ross was already a star. Fresh off her breakout role in The Graduate, she was married at the time, celebrated everywhere she went, while Elliott was just card player number 2, sitting at a table in the background. He barely dared to speak to her. Later, he would confess that it was love at first sight, but a love he kept silent, carrying it with him for years. Ross went through several marriages in the years that followed. Some were passionate but turbulent, others short-lived. Each one seemed to highlight how difficult it was for someone in Hollywood to find a partner who understood the emotional toll of the industry. And then, nearly a decade after that silent meeting on set, fate brought her and Sam Elliott back together. In 1978, they were cast together in The Legacy. By then, Elliott had matured not only in his career, but in life. Ross, after years of personal upheaval, was finally ready for something steady. The quiet admiration Elliott had carried for years turned into a partnership that felt different from anything Ross had known before. They married in 1984 in a simple ceremony far removed from the Hollywood spotlight. For Elliott, it was his first marriage. For Ross, it was her fifth. That alone could have made them the subject of tabloid gossip, but instead of fueling headlines, they built a life based on patience, privacy, and loyalty. A year later, they welcomed their daughter, Cleo Rose Elliott. Unlike her parents, Cleo didn't pursue acting but chose music, carving her own identity in the world of rock. Yet their family life wasn't always the picture-perfect Hollywood dream. In 2011, tensions between Cleo and her mother escalated into a shocking incident, one that grabbed headlines. According to court records, Cleo, in a moment of anger, stabbed her mother's hand with scissors during a heated argument. Katharine Ross filed for a restraining order, citing years of verbal abuse and threats. For fans, it was jarring. Sam Elliott, the quiet, unshakable cowboy, suddenly found his family in the middle of a public storm. But true to his nature, he made no dramatic statements. He didn't run to the press to defend or condemn. Instead, he chose silence, handling the crisis privately and protecting his family from further spectacle. Eventually, Cleo apologized, and Ross withdrew the restraining order. In time, their relationship began to heal, though the scars, both literal and emotional, remained. What stands out here is not the drama itself, but the way Elliott responded. In a world where celebrities often air their dirty laundry for sympathy or attention, Sam chose dignity. His silence wasn't weakness. It was a decision to protect what mattered most. Outside of that rare scandal, Elliott and Ross have lived remarkably private lives. They split their time between California and Oregon, avoiding the glitz of Los Angeles. Their home life is closer to what you'd expect from any longtime couple than from Hollywood royalty. Neighbors describe them as approachable and unpretentious. No paparazzi chasing nights out. No desperate attempts to stay relevant. Just a couple who found stability in a world built on chaos. So what's the secret to their enduring marriage? Elliott once put it simply: it's about the decision to stay. Love, in his view, isn't just emotion. It's commitment. Commitment to walk through the storms, to face the ugly days, to protect each other from the pressures outside. That philosophy has carried them through 4 decades together. And here's where the story becomes relatable to all of us. You don't need to be a Hollywood star to understand the value of loyalty in our own lives, whether it's marriage, family, or friendship. The principle is the same. Relationships last when people decide not to give up, even when it gets hard. Sam Elliott's marriage is proof that love isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about choosing to endure it together. Of course, their life hasn't been entirely without glamour. They've walked red carpets, attended premieres, and smiled for the cameras. But if you look closely, you'll notice something different about them. They don't play to the crowd. Their affection, their body language, their partnership feels unforced. It's real. And in Hollywood, real might be the rarest quality of all. What's fascinating is how this personal stability influenced Elliott's career. While other actors burned out from scandal, divorce, or addiction, Elliott's grounded family life gave him a steady foundation. He could take risks in his roles because his private world was secure. He didn't need Hollywood's chaos to validate him. He already knew who he was. And maybe that's why his performances resonate so deeply. Because when you watch Sam Elliott on screen, you're not just seeing an actor. You're seeing a man who has lived what he's portraying. Loyalty, strength, resilience, for decades. Sam Elliott built an image as Hollywood's steady man, unshaken, composed, almost above the noise. But even a figure as reserved as Elliott has faced moments of turbulence. And those storms reveal just as much about his character as his most iconic roles. But the most public controversy of his career erupted in early 2022. On a podcast, Elliott criticized Jane Campion's Oscar-winning Western, The Power of the Dog. His remarks suggested that the film's portrayal of masculinity and its subtle homosexual themes didn't fit what he saw as a true Western. Within hours, the backlash was fierce. Critics accused him of being out of touch, insensitive, even prejudiced. Social media erupted, with headlines framing Elliott as a relic who couldn't adapt to modern times. Then came another storm, this time fueled not by his words, but by the internet's obsession with sensationalism. In 2023, rumors of his death swept across YouTube and social media. Videos with clickbait titles declared, "Sam Elliott dead at 79." Complete with black and white thumbnails and fake obituaries. Fans flooded comment sections with condolences, convinced the cowboy had ridden off into his final sunset. And how did Elliott respond? He didn't. No press release, no fiery rebuttal, no lawsuits. Instead, he let silence do the work. A few months later, he simply appeared on screen again in Landman, reminding everyone that he was very much alive. In an age where celebrities fight every rumor online, Elliott proved once again that his greatest weapon is restraint. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. What's striking about these moments is not the controversies themselves, but how Elliott handled them. When faced with moral compromise, he chose integrity. When his words caused hurt, he chose humility. When the world tried to bury him with lies, he chose silence. Each decision was consistent with the man audiences have always believed him to be. Steady, principled, unwilling to be swayed by noise. And maybe that's why, despite these storms, Sam Elliott's reputation has endured. Because when the dust settles, people don't remember the headlines. They remember the man who carried himself with dignity through them. When people think of Sam Elliott, they don't just recall his roles. They recall a feeling. The deep baritone, the silver mustache, the posture of a man carved out of the American West. Over time, this image grew into something larger than a film career. It became a cultural archetype in Hollywood, where trends come and go faster than a movie trailer. Elliott chose a different path. He resisted reinvention for reinvention's sake. He didn't try to become the next action superstar or chase quirky roles to stay relevant. Instead, he refined a narrow, authentic lane, the man of quiet strength. And in doing so, he made himself timeless. What makes Elliott's legacy so compelling is how it speaks to values people fear are disappearing: integrity, loyalty, simplicity. When audiences see him on screen, they see someone who embodies a steadiness they crave in a chaotic world. That's why his influence goes beyond film buffs. He's become a cultural symbol. Even as Hollywood evolved, shifting from westerns to superheroes, from dramas to digital franchises, Sam Elliott stayed true to himself. And that's precisely why he endured. His career reminds us that success isn't always about chasing change. Sometimes, it's about holding the line. So, what will Sam Elliott's legacy be? Not just as an actor, but as a reminder. A reminder that in a world obsessed with noise, there is still power in silence. That in a culture chasing reinvention, there is still dignity in constancy. And that even in the chaos of Hollywood, a man can live with sincerity, stay loyal to his craft, and still win the respect of generations. That is the Sam Elliott influence, and it will outlast the spotlight today. Sam Elliott is well into his 70s, and yet he still commands the same attention he did decades ago. He may not appear on every magazine cover or headline, every blockbuster, but when he does step into the spotlight, people listen. That's the power of a career built on authenticity rather than hype. Elliott and Katharine Ross have chosen a life far from Hollywood's noise. They divide their time between California and Oregon, preferring quiet landscapes, greenery, and the rhythm of an ordinary life. For all the fame he has accumulated, Elliott still seems most at home in simple settings. A dinner with his wife, a stroll through town, a moment of silence away from cameras. Fans who have seen him in everyday life often remark on how approachable he is, how he carries himself without the arrogance so often attached to celebrity. And yet, even in this quieter chapter, Elliott remains selective about his work. In 2025, he reunited with screenwriter-director Taylor Sheridan for the second season of Landman, filming alongside a powerhouse cast that included Billy Bob Thornton, Demi Moore, and John Hamm. Elliott once again proved that his presence can still anchor a story, even among giants. A single behind-the-scenes photo shared online of Elliott in costume went viral within hours, proof that his image still resonates as strongly as ever. What's striking is that Elliott doesn't chase these moments. They come to him because of who he is. In a world where actors scramble to stay relevant on social media, Elliott stays relevant by staying true. That alone makes him an anomaly in Hollywood. And perhaps that's why audiences find him so magnetic. Even the smallest glimpses of his daily life draw attention. In May 2025, he was spotted quietly dining at a Fort Worth restaurant. No entourage, no press release, no staged paparazzi photos. Yet within days, the candid picture spread across social media, sparking warm conversations about how he still embodies the spirit of the American West in his everyday demeanor. It's as if people look to Elliott not just as an entertainer, but as a reminder that dignity and humility are still possible in the modern world. So what does his story teach us? That success doesn't always come from being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it comes from patience, discipline, and knowing who you are. Elliott faced rejection, ridicule, and moments of controversy. He was told by his own father that his dream was unrealistic. He worked construction jobs while others got instant fame. He endured being typecast as just the cowboy. And yet, through all of it, he stayed steady. For viewers, his life raises important questions. How do we respond when others doubt our dreams? Do we compromise when shortcuts appear? Or do we hold to our values even if it costs us? Do we chase attention? Or do we build legacies quietly, knowing that the work will speak louder than our self-promotion? Sam Elliott doesn't preach answers to these questions. He lives them. His story is less about Hollywood stardom and more about human perseverance. It's about resilience in the face of doubt, loyalty in the face of turmoil, and authenticity in a world obsessed with reinvention. And maybe that's why his career feels so enduring. Because when audiences watch him on screen, they don't just see a character. They see a man who embodies a way of life, one rooted in patience, integrity, and the belief that true strength doesn't always need to announce itself. So as we close this journey into Sam Elliott's life, let's turn the spotlight on you. What do you think is more important, chasing the spotlight at any cost, or building a legacy slowly, with loyalty and honesty? Do you see his perseverance as admirable wisdom or stubborn resistance to change? Whatever your answer, one thing is clear: in a noisy world, Sam Elliott's whisper will continue to echo long after the credits roll.